this from the Centre of Excellence, and this is Inspire Group. I'm a director of NATP, which is the National Association of Therapeutic Parents, and I'm in charge of peer support. And this evening, in our quite long series of webinars now, we want to talk a bit about coming out of lockdown, because we're really aware that quite a lot of people, much as we've been quite scared in lockdown, we're now actually quite anxious, I feel, about coming out of lockdown. And certainly that's the feedback we've had from quite a lot of people, you know, and we've had comments about that and questions about that during previous webinars. And since we're now in the process, we thought this was a good time to do this. This may not end up being an hour long, but it'll be hopefully useful to you all, and you should have time to sort of ask some questions on screen at the end. So I hope everybody's well. I hope everybody's settled with a nice cup of tea or something, or a glass of wine, glass of beer, whatever's your favourite on this Monday evening. And let's get on with this, shall we? Okay, so the first point, obviously, that we need to cover is that there are government guidelines, and lockdown is easing off gradually. For most of us, the great thing about that is that it's allowed for more freedom of movement. So those of us that are trying desperately to look after loads of children indoors or in the locality can go further afield for longer with a picnic. And I think that's been a really massive thing for quite a lot of people. I know it has been for me. That freedom of movement has been very important for people. In addition, obviously, we've had the increased social interaction, which means that people have been able, in some cases, to get together with grandparents or with other family members or with friends and so on and so forth. And for me personally, I know that's been massive. It's been absolutely massive. It's been lovely to see my grown-up children and my grandchildren, and it's been lovely to see some of my friends just, you know, doing the things that we all do. Of course, some children are now returned to school. Some children have been in school all the time. There's a return to school if that's an appropriate thing to do. For some children it is, and for some children it isn't. Obviously, it just really does depend a great deal on your own viewpoint and your own family circumstances. And people are, of course, being encouraged to return to work if possible. Okay, so, but so what, really? So you all know that already. No point in making a big deal out of it. When we're thinking about coming out of lockdown, it's really important that we all remember our own individual circumstances, regardless of the guidelines. Are you shielded? Do you have a chronic or life-threatening or a terminal condition? In which case, you need to take a very individual viewpoint, don't you, on what your family can and can't do. How are you going to arrange that? What plan are you going to have to make sure that the people within your household have some freedom of movement, but that you are still kept safe? These aren't things that people have talked about very much, but my feeling is that number one, you have to feel safe. And number two, you have to feel confident that the measures that you're taking are sufficient. So that might mean that that you have reduced social contact still. It might mean that somebody takes the children out to different places, and when they get back, they hop straight into a shower and soap off, and their clothes go straight into a washing machine, and everybody washes their hands. And you do those sorts of things. You need to get your own ideas, your own routines in place to maintain the safety and security in your home. Are you a vulnerable person? You need to make your own choices about whether you're over 70, but you still want to go out and about, and that's your choice to make, or whether you need to completely be careful of your own health and your own situation. And I'm not in all of your households, clearly, but you are. And do you know what? You're all therapeutic parents. And I think that that's a really important thing, because this webinar is designed for therapeutic parents, and I hope that other people will get some use out of it as well. But those of us that are used to working in this environment, you're used to making your own choices and to thinking about the individual needs of your family. Nothing has changed. You should still be thinking about the individual needs of your family. And then you should be kind of making adjustments as and where you can. Obviously, anybody that has direct contact with COVID-19 needs to then be self-isolating and being careful. And I'm sure that all of you are aware of the news coming out of the USA and the protests that have been held both in America and here in England, and indeed globally. And maybe some of you are quite concerned about the possible spike that there will be as a result of that. Some things are not controllable for us, but again, we can make our own choices and decide that, okay, in view of that, we're going to spend the next 2 weeks still being very, very careful and wait and see whether there's been an additional spike as a result of those, you know, but obviously I have a great deal of sympathy for the movement. However, we do need to still bear in mind what the end result of those activities might be, and then make our own choices around that. I hope that that's kind of, everybody finds that to be a sensible idea. So this is really the most important part of this whole evening. We spend a lot of our time risk assessing. I mean, we're parents. We risk assess all the time. Our children don't, we literally, we're barely in the house at all without risk assessing. We're not going out of the house at all about risk assessing. We are used to trying to think, okay, in my child's case, I have to be careful to hold their hand all the time. I have to be mindful that these situations might be overwhelming. I have to be considering whether they're able to conform to the social norms and what I can do to help them with that. We might need to be thinking about all manner of things, but we have to really be mindful that we are used to risk assessments. We don't always call them risk assessments, but we do them all the time. We literally have them running through our heads all the time, every minute of the day. Where have the children gone? What are they doing? What's happening now? And this is just kind of an extension of that, really, isn't it? What can I do today? What are the risks? How am I going to keep everybody in this situation safe? What routines do I need to follow on leaving the house? What routines do I need to follow coming back into the house? What can I do? So think about what works for you. What works for your family? Does it work best for you to stay very local? Then stay very local. Or you've got permission to move further afield. That doesn't mean that you should. It just means that if you suddenly want to do that, you can do. Or have you got a child that's really finds it difficult to manage social distancing, and you don't want them to have lots of contact with lots of people that you don't know? Because some of our children, when we're talking about children from trauma, of course, they run to make friends with every adult they can. Now, I know that children are not, they're not the super carriers that we thought they were going to be. We do know that. However, if they're running around saying hello to every adult in sight, they are still possibly picking up the coronavirus even on their clothes or whatever. So do you want to have that child in a very close packed social situation? What I don't know what your views are on that. These are things that we need to think about. I mean, I wouldn't have taken my daughter on a very close packed social situation because she would find it overwhelming. So I would automatically be looking for a less intense environment if I was going out and about with my own daughter, and even that's still true to an extent now, because very many of our children of course, are still having a lot of very intense anxiety. They're having a lot of fear that's been brought up by this whole situation. And actually, for them, going back out into the big wide world is quite overwhelming. And I've spoken to numerous adults that are thinking, going back out into the big wide world, that is too scary for me at the moment. And I would really urge you all to be thinking, do you know what? It's okay to do this on your terms, as you're able to, as slowly as you want to, and bearing in mind the needs of your children. You know, and let's not put ourselves through the angst of having people maybe saying to us, why can't you keep your children under control, when there's an added factor of why can't you keep your children under control? Don't you realise that there's COVID out here? So let's think carefully about what the activities are that we can do. Obviously, if you're close to the sea, you can go to the sea. And obviously you can go, you know, to parks and to forests and to woods and to wherever you can locally. You might know that you've already got immunity, in which case that's fine, but most of us have not got a clue. We're not going to know for quite some time. So think carefully, because we need to encourage ourselves and the children to take those baby steps back into the world. But we do have to do that at a pace that is reasonable for us. So for some children, for some families, that might mean, let's just go and do some gardening in the front garden for a few minutes, so that you can see that, oh look, nothing bad is happening out here. It's all right, we're okay doing this. Maybe we should walk down to the shop. There you are, it's fine, nothing bad is happening. So it might be nice to go for a bit of a longer walk, or to try a greater excursion. There are people still that are absolutely terrified. So we do have to be aware of the need to keep our children close by us, and to try and help them not to be sort of in other people's spaces. And if that isn't a possibility for the children in your home, then you're going to need to think creatively about how to manage that, because people are still so scared out there. And the last thing that we need is a scared person yelling at our children for not keeping social distance when they can't keep social distance. So some families need to have different solutions, and we need to have some, you know, just remember that there are different things that we can do. So maybe you'll carry on garden visiting for a while. Maybe you'll maintain your social bubble in quite a small sense for a while. Maybe you'll extend that gradually. And for your children, just think about, what can they manage? What are they going to be able to accommodate? Because it's a big thing, isn't it? It's a really big thing. So make choices that are based on your own individual circumstances. And as I'm saying here, be mindful of the impact on other people, especially when they're liable to be very vocal if they feel that their own social circle has been impinged. It's very difficult. And I've actually, and the reason I'm saying that is because I've really noticed, I've seen, just generally speaking, being out and about, and I've seen people having pitched arguments with each other about why they're wearing gloves or why they're wearing masks, and it's, you know, it's a mystery to me. It seems to me that people have stopped being able to live and let live, and just understand that people have different points of view on the same situation, and that we're not in charge of other people's situations, so we have no knowledge of what's going on in their personal lives. And we really need to have that kind of give and take towards each other at the moment. But given that people don't always do that, and that we do not want our children to be terrified by somebody's angry face coming at them because they're terrified themselves, let's just be very mindful of that. Okay, just going to go on to my next slide. Oh, I went the wrong way, I think. What's going on? Hello. Oh, there we are. So, as I'm saying, set your own pace. Some of you have got higher levels of anxiety, some of you have got lower levels of anxiety, and it will be the same for members of your family. So I'm thinking here about members of my own family, where one member of my family has been really at very high risk, and in fact over this last week developed clots over her lungs. And she's my daughter, and she's young still, and it's the third time this has happened. You can imagine a COVID situation that was so difficult, and even still there were some members of the family that were sort of like, no, it's not really that bad. But it is really that bad when you're her and you've got such severely compromised lungs. I know of another family. This is my brother and sister-in-law. They are desperate to see their grandson, but their son is so risk averse that it's really proving difficult for them to be able to, and it's causing such distress and such upset. But they're still trying to do the best they can to respect their son's wishes. And I think you'll find that's replicated throughout the whole of the United Kingdom and globally, that we have to be very, very tolerant of everybody's own take on this and their own individual situation, because, you know, people can't help being however anxious people are. And whether we agree with them or not, we have to respect that they're entitled to their opinion and they're entitled to their levels of anxiety, and just hope that they will feel brave enough to take another step soon or not. So reintroduce activities in a structured way. So don't, you know, let's not sort of start by going camping for a week. Let's start by going out into the woods for a walk. And then let's extend that. And then let's reflect with our own little families in our own houses about what we would like to do, what we're looking forward to. Let's develop some optimism about being able to get out and about. Let's make some plans, but let's do, you know, like when the children first came to you, let's do this slowly and accommodating each step as we go, so that the children feel confident, and really importantly, so that you feel confident as well. Because we want everybody to feel safe, and we want everybody to be able to enjoy the new environment to whatever extent they're able to, don't we? And if you can, let's just try and relax a bit. Just because we've been told we can do something doesn't mean that we have to do it. And let's be really resistant of letting us, of anybody trying to pressurize us, and just say, okay, thank you, you know, I'm really going to take those opinions on board. Well, I'm actually going to carry on just doing my own thing. Thanks very much indeed. Now we've got loads of time, and I have seen some comments coming up. I'm just going to see if I can look at a couple on my screen. Where is it here? Otherwise, I'll have to ask Rosie to unmute herself so that I can see what's going on. Oh, there we are. I've just seen the chat there. Right. Be happy being safe at home. Okay, so I can't really see a proper question there. I can see lots of different kind of comments. I can see Claire here has had to isolate due to son's vulnerability. So nephew hasn't had contact with mum and behaviour's improved. But as you exit lockdown, he will return gradually with contact, dreading it. So that's interesting, isn't it? Now there's something that I hadn't thought about at all. It is, I think, if you've got that real evidence that your child actually has done so much better without that contact, then I think it's worth making a case for being able to reduce the contact or making it more on your child's, on your nephew's terms, because the voice of the child should be heard. So whatever age your child is, and I was talking to somebody literally earlier on today whose child at age 2 was crying and not wanting to have the contact in the house through Skype, 2 years old, and showing that very clearly. Now, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child states very clearly that the child's voice should be heard, and that should be according to whatever means they have available to them. So a 2-year-old whose mother comes onto the screen and who whizzes right out the door immediately is very clearly showing you what she thinks of that. Or if she's climbing up her foster mum's neck and trying to just, practically get into her body, that is giving you a very clear picture. So remember to use the voice of the child. And if you don't feel very confident about putting that across yourself, or because it's a family member you don't really feel comfortable because it's going to cause whatever problems it's going to cause, then remember that you can have an advocate appointed. And if you go onto the Gov UK website, you'll find that there's a whole link about advocacy for children. And in fact, I'll send the link over to Rosie so that she can send it out to you later on today. Just going to have another look and see what I can find now. Going back to my Zoom meeting. Come on, please. Thank you. Right, let's go here. See if there's any more coming. Yes, school environments are very, very different to return to and staying in their bubbles. Yeah, no, I think that I'm not at all sure how this is going to work, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not at all sure how this is going to work. It's going to be a very difficult transition. And even for children that have been in school the whole time, they've been in their little social bubble, and they're going to have to stay in that bubble. And they're not going to be able to play with their friends in the same way. They're not going to be able to interact with them in the same way. I think it's going to throw a lot of children off balance. And I would urge parents to be looking at the behaviour of the child to decide whether that's the best idea for you or not. And I'm going to be really, really controversial here, and I'm going to explain first of all that these are the views of me, Jane Mitchell, not necessarily the views that are represented by Centre of Excellence or NATP or Inspire Group. But really, our children have had massive disruption this year, and it hasn't just been our children, it's been children globally. So if they don't go back to school till September, it's really not going to harm them, because every other child is in the same situation. There will be children in different parts of the world that are in a much, much worse situation, believe me. And although there's a lot of kind of like, oh, but they're missing out on their education, we're talking about tots. They can, even if we're talking about children in the middle of their GCSEs, even if we're talking about children in the middle of their A-levels, take the pressure off them. If the whole country had to stay back a year because of this, it would not be the end of the world. It really wouldn't. And we need to remember that there are lots of education opportunities at home. Okay, that's my view, and I'm very happy for you all to jump on and tell me how completely wrong I am. That's entirely your prerogative, absolutely. Rebuilding friendships. Rebuilding friendships is again, these are things that we're going to have to do in a very different way, aren't they? Because of course friendships are very, very hard. It's really hard for our kids anyway, never mind in the middle of all of this going on. So we really, really do need to be trying to be reintroducing friends in a very gentle way. So maybe if there is a friendship group, maybe they can first of all have a chat on a Zoom meeting, or I know that some children have been finding that really difficult. If you're in contact with the parents, can you meet up in a park somewhere? Not too many at a time, please, because not because you know, partly because of the guidelines, but also because it's just too overwhelming for the kids. They haven't seen their friends for 3 months. Let's let them meet each other one at a time. Who is the most important young person? Who is the most important friend in your child's life? Try and see if you can have a meeting with them first. Keep it short and sweet. Be mindful of their limitations. Let's set them up to succeed. All of those things that we always have to think about, we have to think about them all over again. We will be facing some regressed behaviours, and we will be facing having to recreate some steps that we did before. But just remind the children, because the most important message you can give your kids is, I've got this, you are safe with me. I have decided this, and I would not do this if it was not safe. Okay, so be very, very clear that you are making the best decisions that you can for your children, and that they are safe, and that if they feel uncomfortable, you will take them out of the situation, and then make sure that you've got the capability to do that, obviously. But friendships are so difficult. It's really difficult. Yes, so I was going to make this point, Claire, about all that children have to return. Yes, they do. But if you have a family with vulnerable circumstances, then you can say, but they can't because of these vulnerable circumstances, which is what I say back here, if I can find it again. Risk assess. What works for you and your family? Families need different solutions. These are the government guidelines, but we also have individual circumstances. Don't be afraid to advocate for what is best for your family. And remember, no matter what happens, it's in the best interests of anybody that's got foster parents, SGO, whoever, whatever sort of parent you are. It is best to maintain the stability of the family. It's best to do that in the best interests of the family, no matter what your individual circumstances are, and no matter what the guidelines say, which is probably a very, very wrong thing for me to say. So again, I'd better give you another disclaimer that these are necessarily my views and not necessarily the views of NATP, Inspire Group, or indeed the Centre of Excellence. Rebecca, if you're a foster carer but don't have the power to refuse, but you do you do have the power to say, this is my family situation, and actually according to even according to government guidelines, I should still be doing this, this and this. You are able to do that. If you have a good supervising social worker, they should be able to help you with that. Oh, sorry, I've just lost my comments here. Oh. Okay. Yes, it's down to risk assessments. Okay, right. Sorry. Son's behaviour has been so much better since lockdown. I know it's. Okay, so now this is I think something about single parents out there who would take your daughter if you are ill. Now I know several families where this is a factor, and absolutely, if you are at risk and you are also a foster parent or an adoptive parent or a bio parent, then you are going to have to say, well, I'm sorry, but I am at risk, and there is no one but me that is able to look after these children, and therefore I'm going to put the needs of my family first, and I'm going to say they're not going back to school, and I'm going to say I'm going to take this at my own pace. It's I do not feel that there is any kind of institution that is going to be able to legally block you from doing that. You know, we have to make best interest decisions on behalf of our children. Okay, any more questions? School have to sign it off. Children were allocated laptops. Okay. Are there any... Oh, bless you. So I can see Karen saying, my girls have done no work for 11 weeks. But, you know, right at the beginning of lockdown, we had a webinar pointing out that there's more ways to educate your children than with schoolwork. And I'm sure that your children might not have done any schoolwork, but they might have learned a lot of other useful skills about being able to manage a difficult changing situation, definitely, about being able to manage new baking skills maybe. And let's remember, baking is also science, it's also maths, it's also whatever else. Maybe they've read a few books, maybe they've watched a few documentaries. They haven't stopped learning because they haven't been to school. It's a complete fallacy to say so. They will just have learned different things. Maybe they've taken more notice of spring unfolding. You know, I mean, all of these things are very, very valid things. Okay. Okay. Right, some of these now are not really comments. Okay. Little one due to start in September. I think preschool for 6 months. I think, you know, if you're starting a child into their school career, they're starting in September, just say, let's, I want to take it very slowly. It's going to be a whole new environment. We can advocate for our children in the same way that we always advocate for our children, and to allow them to take small steps that they can accommodate to before they integrate. That's the sensible way to do it, isn't it? So let's all be prepared to do that. Animal documentaries all day and he wants a pet jaguar. Well, I think that's brilliant. How about the children that have been attending all the way through like yours? Well, I think that's brilliant. Children that have been attending all the way through like yours will have... The thing is, what they haven't been doing is a full educational programme. We know that. They've been attending, but a lot of what they've been doing has been creative or PE or some other form of activity. They haven't been following the curriculum completely. So they've got more of a heads up about the environment, but they're still going to have to face a big transition as other children come back into the school, and they'll still need a lot of reassurance about that and the fact that it's safe. And they'll still need to be reminded that even though those children are back in school, they will still have to be a little bit isolated and in their social bubble. So it's a little bit hard. An older daughter who's at risk and she's terrified to meet her friends at all. Terrified to meet her friends again. How can you help her become less stressed? Okay, so that's really hard, isn't it? Because, you know, she's been told for the last several months that because she's at risk, anybody that she comes into contact with could potentially threaten her life. So if she's going to re-engage with her friends, first of all, find a friend that has been very good at following the guidelines, maybe, so that you can reassure your daughter that you know that they know that they've been symptom free for 3 months. It's absolutely fine. She will not be in danger from that person. And then encourage her not to run up and have a big old cuddle, because that's going to be overwhelming for her, but to have a social distance visit so that she knows that it's okay. Maybe she can have a bit of a tea party in the garden with 1 or 2 friends so that she knows that it's safe, and so that her anxiety ramps back down, so that she can start remembering that her friends are her friends instead of seeing them as potential kind of COVID carrying assassins. Let's try and help children in really practical ways to re-engage with their peer groups. Just let's be practical and think about what we can do, and ask them what will help. Yeah, okay. I'm just wondering if there's anything else I need to answer. Is there a specific question? Otherwise, we'll probably wrap this up fairly soon. So I'm watching the comments come in now. I hope that this has been useful to everybody. How do we manage our kids safely starting their contact visits again? Our kids have had 2 contact visits and social distancing is hard, and you're supervising the contact. Okay, so that's very, very hard. In the fostering agency that I'm involved with, which is True Fostering, we don't advocate for the parents, whether they're foster parents, SGO, whatever, adoptive. We don't advocate for parents to be in contact, supervising contact, unless we're very sure that those parents have not been abusive in the past. It's very hard, and it's very hard to manage social contact. And I think if it's too hard for your children to manage the social distancing around their parents, again, we're back to what works for you and your family and individual circumstances. What do you know about the parents? Have they been following guidelines, or have they been, you know, meeting up with all their mates, having a party somewhere? What's your feeling about it? Use your best judgment and just try and support the children, and you know, or say this is just too difficult until they're allowed to hug each other again. It's really got to be, you know, you've got to base these things on your own knowledge, haven't you? Now, I had a comment there from somebody saying how to talk to a 5-year-old about death. I think that was what I read. And of course, this is you or fear of you dying. It's so difficult. Telling a 5-year-old about death, telling any child about death, it's hard, isn't it? Because you then start throwing into the whole mix. You've got the whole issue of the fact that you are not going to live forever yourself, and that's very, very, very difficult. There are quite a few books that are really, really helpful, actually, about death and dying. One of them is called Dragonflies or Water Bugs. But the one that I always use, now it's tell you a bit of a shaggy dog story, but not too long one. My own daughter came into our family. I have both children too, but she entered our family just before Christmas one year. 6 weeks later, my ex-husband's father died of a brain tumour. So we had to kind of jump in with this very quickly. And I was given a book for my daughter over Christmas that year. And the book's called No Matter What. And it's by a lady called Debbie Gliori. And I will make sure that you've got some sort of a link to this after this video finishes, after this webinar finishes. And it's a lovely book anyway, because it's about a small person that's having difficulty managing their big feelings. So it starts off with them kind of chucking stuff around and being a right whole paddywhack. And it's 2 generic, like foxes. So there's a big fox and a little fox, and they're called Big and Little. And they go through all these scenarios where little fox says to big fox, oh, but you know, what if I did this and what if I did that? And she comes back with very appropriate unconditional love responses in each case. And then the little fox asks, what happens when you die? Does love go on? What happens to it then? And the big fox's response is to take little fox outside to look at the stars in the sky and to say, some of these stars died a long time ago, but they're still shining really brightly. And love, like starlight, never dies. And I always thought, gosh, what a lovely way to be trying to explain that concept, that You know, the love that you hold for somebody can stay with you. And I will say to my own daughter, when she's worried about me or angry about me dying one day, because she does see it as an ultimate betrayal that one day I'm going to deliberately die and leave her behind, you know, obviously, because that's just what kind of thing that I would do, generally speaking. And I've been saying to her for some time that, number one, I'm going to stay alive for as long as I can. I never say I'm not going to die, because that's not true, and I don't lie to her or to any other child. But I will say to her, by the time I die, I will have put so much love into your heart that you will always know it's there, and you'll always be able to remember that I love you. And remember, love like starlight never dies. This is again, this is me talking, and I don't have a particular religious affiliation. Some of you will find it easier to talk about death in context of your wider beliefs, and that's perfect as well, because that's what your child's got, and that's your belief. You know, it's just a perfect way to do it. But if you're unsure, then try and find a nice book like that will help you to make those explanations, and to be very clear that just because people can die of COVID doesn't mean that everybody will die of COVID. And what we'll do is we'll put the link to our video that we've been sending out, which explains COVID to children, which explains that most people get better. Only a very few people have had to go into hospital out of the people that have contracted COVID, and out of those, only a few, you know, a few of those in percentage terms have then gone on and died. But I do recognise that it is a huge and a difficult subject for people to undertake. I hope that maybe that's a little bit helpful for you. Just having a look back again now at my comments. Yes, yes, I think, you see, COVID has made everybody really, really scared that everybody's going to die. I mean, let's face it, as we've been saying since day one, Rosie and I, it's like what's happened is everybody's world has disintegrated overnight and become something absolutely, absolutely unrecognisable. And if that can happen, anything can happen. And that might mean that they might die or you might die. It is a very, very real fear. And so we need to address that very simply, just saying, we're doing everything that we can, we're doing all the right things, we're washing our hands, and, you know, we're doing everything that we can not to get COVID. But if we do, we probably will get better. That's the most likely thing. The most likely thing is that we'll get better. Obviously, don't say that if you're a very vulnerable person. But if you are able to say that, hand on your heart, you know, you're not in a vulnerable age group, you haven't got a significant risk, you're not suffering from asthma or whatever, then do say it, because it's the truth. You know, let's use the truth of this situation. We know more now than we did 3 months ago, and we're getting through this situation. And now we need to try and just step back out of it and help our children to do that too, if that's the most appropriate thing for us. Open up for me, please. There we are. Okay, so somebody here, toddler due to come home from foster carers very soon. He's very sociable and has struggled with the isolation of lockdown. Wondering how to get him started socialising while managing risk. Now, Dawn, I can't tell. I think you must be a bio father, mustn't you? Whatever the situation is, if your child is coming home from foster parents, I don't need to know your personal circumstances really, but if a child is having a transition from a home to another home, then first of all, this is going to sound like, why would I want to do that? But please just listen to me. First of all, find out what routine the foster parents had and stick to it, at least to begin with. Only make changes gradually, because your toddler will need that consistency, predictability, and reliability. Secondly of all, the most important people for your toddler to reconnect with are you. And you don't say if you've got a partner, but if you have a partner, your partner as well. And that time is valuable time. And it doesn't matter if you spend a week or two or even 3 or 4. Simply playing and reconnecting. The important thing is for you to reconnect with your child, not for your child to connect socially with anybody else. That's a big job for them to do. Don't worry about taking your time over it. By the time you've done that, you'll probably find that things are opening out a bit more, and it will be more possible to kind of maybe try and go to places where there might be other children, but don't worry too much about it. If you find 1 or 2 people that you can meet up with safely, with everybody being happy about it, then you're doing well. You know, it's okay. Your son or your toddler is coming back, so just enjoy that moment and let things develop gradually. You don't have to jump straight into, right, I've got to, you know what, there's a lot to do with looking after a toddler. So just concentrate on getting the routine established, on doing first things first, and being, you know, the loving person that just wants to welcome their toddler back. And enjoy it, because I tell you what, it's going to be tiring. It's going to be 24/7. There will be ups and downs. Please don't try to run before you can walk, and please give yourself space to enjoy the experience, because then so will your toddler. Okay, I'm having another look. Where are we? There we are. Okay, a solo parent with a 4-year-old in lockdown for 80 days straight. My goodness, you've been amazing. Okay. Okay, so you've been in lockdown for 80 days, you've got a 4-year-old, and in all that time, you've just seen each other. You wanted to go back on Monday, but how on earth can you start that? It's been a long time without seeing anyone. So I wonder whether they shouldn't be going back full time immediately anyway. I would be thinking about how between now and Monday can you step up kind of ordinary interactions with people, so that it's a little bit more usual for your child to do that, for your 4-year-old, because it is a big step. I would also have a word with the school about maybe just starting with mornings. I'm sure that as a 4-year-old, you probably either got 2 days in the beginning of the week or 2 days at the end of the week that the child's able to go back for anyway. So it probably won't be full time, but you might want to have it even less than that. That's entirely up to you. Do remember that the classrooms will be smaller, and children will be being kept more or less apart from each other. So just start by taking her out a bit, walking around a little bit, you know, just getting her used to the fact that, look, all these people are out now. That's because we think it's much safer now. It's much safer. And remember, it's my job to keep you safe, and I always will keep you safe. I will not let you do anything dangerous. You know that. Because when you do something dangerous, I get really cranky, don't I? So I wouldn't let you do anything dangerous. So you don't have to worry about that. Be as reassuring as you can. If you can, take her for a walk, or him, take them for a walk or a drive or whatever, however you normally would get there to the school, so that they're used to the journey, so that they're used to what it looks like, so they can have a little look from the outside. It might be open for children of carers, so there might be somebody that could come and meet you. You know, have a chat with the school, see what's possible, see what's possible in terms of maybe going to have a look at where she might be and those kind of things, and then just do what is possible and work with what isn't possible, and just be prepared to make different decisions on the spot. So if she goes in on the first day and it's been really difficult for her, then just say, do you know what, you did so well going in today. I think we'll give it a miss for tomorrow, but we'll try again next week, because I think that by then you'll have had time to think about it, and and you'll see that everything's fine. Make your own decisions and make them kind of carefully in respect of your own child. Oh, yeah, just 2 days. Okay, I hope that was helpful for you. Now, we are now at 5 to 9. I'm about to wrap this up. It's been lovely to have lots of you joining me this evening. I hope this has been really, really useful for you. Rosie, have you mocked up anything that I should have noticed that I haven't noticed? And is there anything that you need to add, please?
It looks as if you've covered everything, Jane, or if not, we'll be followed up afterwards, so thank you.
All right, everybody. So I'd like to wish you all a very good night and good luck in the coming weeks. And I'm sure that I'll see some of you again on Thursday. I certainly hope so. Night, night, everybody. Take care now.